First of all, let me say a massive, massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, and even bought me a coffee on behalf of my sister's operation. You're the best. Thank you so much for all your well wishes and your good vibes. She is on the mend, and I can't wait to surprise her with that treat when I see her later this week. And I'll keep you all posted. Thanks again, those kind coffees are really going to make her smile. The theme of this week's video is love hotels. For those in the know, and those who wish to skip the introduction, I will leave a timestamp in the description box below. Love hotels are hotels which offer double rooms for short periods of time. The name originates from Hotel Love in Osaka, which was built in 1968 and it had a rotating sign. Although love hotels exist all over the world, notably in South Korea and Thailand, the term love hotel is often used to refer specifically to those located within Japan. Typically, you can rent a room for a minimum of 1 to 3 hours during the day, called a rest service, and for the whole night it's called a stay, which usually starts after 10 o'clock. As the name suggests, the main purpose of the love hotels is to provide couples with some undisturbed time together, a bit of intimacy. The rooms are equipped according to purpose with these large double beds. There's huge TVs there, and they have a lot of spicy content on there. They have nice bathrooms, big baths, sometimes wide enough for 2 people. Some love hotels are themed. You can get like these crazy ones which have space theme or, Dracula theme, some crazy things like that. And they come properly equipped with costumes and stuff which you can rent or buy. Love hotels are found all over Japan. They can usually be recognized because of their extravagant looks or their signs and advertising. Typically, you can't really see the windows from outside the love hotel to, sort of heighten that sense of privacy. The reception at a love hotel is very anonymous. The guests usually choose a room, and it's on these like electrical boards, and you go over and you press a button, and then you pay at the window where the person, the clerk or receptionist, is usually hidden by this screen. You'll see like hands take away the money and not be face to face with the staff on site there. What makes them an interesting topic for scary stories is the heightened state of anonymity you experience in these hotels. You do not typically see other guests or staff. Everything is designed to leave the customers in absolute privacy. What are people using this privacy for? Well, except the obvious. It's not always what it's intended for. Sometimes it's to hide, to be alone for the final time, or to commit acts of crime against the person you're alone with. What could have happened in the room before you checked in? What might you find or overhear? And what about abandoned love hotels? Here are 5 allegedly true creepy love hotel stories you haven't heard. Let me know if you like this topic, as there are a lot more stories out there, and I could mix in some true crime on the next one. Enjoy, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. It might not be the scariest story you ever heard, but at least this is a true one. It happened about 10 years ago. I went to Kumamoto, which is near to Fukuoka, with my then girlfriend. We left late. I think it was about 11 at night, and we decided on staying in a cheap love hotel on the way to save some money. We were driving, and at around 1 a.m. our conversation was drying up. It was obvious that we were both more tired than we first thought. There were a few hotels along the way. Some looked really expensive and some looked old, but sometimes the older ones are more expensive and the modern ones are cheaper, so it was hard to decide. It got to around 2 a.m. and I needed to get off the road, so I decided on just going with whatever the next one was. We saw a sign on the national highway and followed the directions to the Love Hotel. The hotel was this white square building. It looked pretty good. It stood out against the dark night sky. My girlfriend said that the place was creepy and giving off bad vibes. She wanted to go somewhere else. Well, she didn't count on the fact that I am incredibly selfish, or at least I was back then, so I ignored her, and I just pulled into the parking lot. Once we walked in, I realized that this place was nothing like the love hotels I had been in before. We walked in through the automatic doors to find a large lobby. A guy from behind the counter came out to us and told us the available room number and handed us a key. Usually in love hotels there is a panel where you choose the room you want, and the staff isn't so, forthcoming. Well, in this hotel, it seems like the price was the same for every room. In other love hotels you can go with a cheap room or an expensive room. Something seemed off about this place, but since we were already there and tired, I didn't feel like getting back in the car and looking for another one, so we just went up to our room. The room was pretty standard. It looked nothing like a love hotel room, to be honest. It looked like a business hotel room, at best. For some reason, there was a huge poster looming over the head of the double bed. It was a poster of somebody famous. He was a singer-songwriter, actor, all that stuff. His name is Nagavuchi, if you're interested. The poster of this guy looked really out of place in the love hotel. I really didn't like the room, but I couldn't put my finger on why. There was just something off about it. We looked in the bathroom, and the bath they had was this big square-like sterile-looking thing. My girlfriend grumbled about it, and I laughed as she filled up the tub. I remember thinking out here, in the countryside, away from the cities, they have no clue what a good love hotel looks like. I mean, it wasn't a very sensual place. While she was taking a bath, I laid on the bed, and I was nodding off. And then I felt the weight on the other side of the bed. I slowly opened my eyes to greet her, but she wasn't there. And then a second or two passed, and I heard her scream. She was still in the bathroom. I rushed to the bathroom. I almost ran straight past her, as she was crouching down in the corner of the bathroom by the sink. I asked her what had happened, and she said she saw something in the mirror while she was drying her hair. Yeah, I didn't feel like taking a bath after that. She seemed so shaken up. And that, of course, meant we weren't going to bang that night like I hoped earlier. Thanks, hotel. Usually she doesn't sleep near me because she says my snoring is so terrible, and she doesn't want to get too hot. But that night I couldn't get her to let go of me. She didn't say a word, she just held me, and I knew that she must be really frightened by what she saw. She wanted to keep the lights on. Man, I hate that. I just can't get to sleep with the lights on. I was lying there, trying my best to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. I opened my eyes to see how she was doing, and I saw that her eyes were screwed tightly shut. She was just as awake as I was. I noticed something behind her. I looked beyond her to see two boys. They had the same face as one another. I could see their eyes and their nose, and they were peering down at my girlfriend from the end of the bed. It was chilling. When I locked eyes with one of them, they ducked down. It was absolutely horrifying. There was no way in hell I was going to sleep now. So I shook her awake, despite the fact I knew she wasn't sleeping. I said that we were going to get the hell out of there. While she was getting dressed, my attention was drawn back to the poster for some reason. I decided to try and peel it back to see if there was anything behind it. It was like the wall was sweating with dew. There was loads of scribble like graffiti behind the poster, and I guess that the poster was there to cover it. But to be honest, it looked like the scribbles of a madman, or a bunch of kids were allowed free rein on the walls to draw. I didn't like it. I called the front desk, and I said that I had seen two boys at the foot of my bed. The lady at the front desk said that she would give me another room for half the price. She didn't even seem shocked by my claims of ghostly children appearing in the room. Well, we didn't want to stay in any room in that hotel, so we said that we were leaving. It was really annoying. I had to pay for the room, since we technically used it and we didn't take the alternative room. We pulled out of the parking lot and went to join the highway again. And there was the sign for the hotel, you know, those ones that go, "Thanks for visiting, come back and see us again soon." Yeah, that kind of thing. Well, below that sign I noticed the faded words which read, "Pediatric Hospital." I asked my girlfriend if she saw the two boys with the same face. She called me stupid and said that kids that look the same as one another are usually known as twins. I asked her what made her so sure that they were twins, and she said something which spooked me out. She said that she knew they were twins because she saw their mother standing on the other side of the bedroom, and the way the mother was glaring at us in bed was the reason why her eyes were screwed so tightly shut. She couldn't bear the hateful stare from that ghostly apparition. She said that I fell asleep at one point, which I couldn't believe. Apparently, while I was asleep, she heard children running back and forth. I'll never forget that experience in that love hotel in the middle of nowhere. About a year or two ago, I was with my partner driving along the highway, and we were both really tired. We had hit an awful lot of traffic en route, and it was getting harder and harder to keep our eyes open. So we decided to get off at the next available turning to look for a hotel. We found a love hotel near Lake Sagami in Kanagawa. It was already past 2 a.m. There were loads of rooms available since it was a weekday and not a national holiday. Also, it was kind of in a rural place. Maybe that was why it wasn't busy. I was glad because we had our pick of the rooms. We were both so tired, all we wanted to do was get some sleep. We selected our room and got the key. It wasn't the best looking hotel, but it would have to do. We went up to the room and pretty much got in bed. I must have fallen asleep pretty quickly because the next thing I knew, I was waking up. I could hear a noise. It was so irritating because I was so tired, so I just tried to ignore it. The sound wouldn't go away though. I was lying on my back staring at the ceiling, and all that I could hear was this kind of shuffling noise. I lay there listening to it, and then a secondary noise began to accompany it, a kind of clanking, rattling metal sound. It sounded far away, and I really didn't want it to occupy my brain space, so I returned to trying to get some sleep. My girlfriend was there sleeping next to me. Something about those noises, though, weirded me out the more I thought about them. So I sat up in bed. Somehow I expected that this would help me listen to the noises easier. Next, I got up out of bed. I tried to figure out where the noises were coming from. At this point, my eyes were pretty well adjusted to the darkness of the room, so I didn't bother turning the lights on. I moved towards the door and I figured out that the sound was coming from outside, in the hallway. I pressed my ear against the door and I heard the clanking and shuffling sounds more clearly. It would always be shuffling followed by clanking. I understood what these sounds were now. They were the sounds of shoes, someone walking, the shuffling, and doorknobs turning, the clanking, the rattling. A bolt of ice shot up my spine when I figured out that whoever was shuffling along the hallway and trying the doorknobs was working their way up the hall and getting closer. I whispered to my girlfriend, "Hey, wake up!" She stirred from her slumber and said, "What?" in an irritated voice. I whispered that I was going to call the front desk. I tried to tell her everything I could about what was happening. Of course, we were in room 810, which meant that we were the furthest most room from the elevator, the last room at the end of the hall. We were essentially bottlenecked in a dead end. The noise I had heard was now getting louder. It was getting closer to our room. It was a really weird situation to be in. We were freaking out. I was scrabbling along in the dark to find the phone, and as soon as I laid hands on it, I handed it to my partner and asked her to dial the front desk. "Hey, sorry, we're hearing this really weird noise getting closer to our room. I'm pretty sure someone's out there just trying the door handles of each room. I don't know what to do," I heard her say. I stood tightly against the door, whispering to her that we couldn't afford to let anyone know we were in the room. Now, there was a lock our side. It was an old-fashioned key lock. I whispered to my girlfriend to pass me the key. And this was before card keys were the norm in hotels. And this hotel was kind of an old one anyway. Oddly, there was no chain on the door either. Since the hotel wasn't full, we must have forgotten to lock the goddamn door. I could hear the stranger getting closer to our room. Noises were coming up the hallway. While we were scrabbling around in the dark, searching for the key, we heard the shuffling sound stop at our door. I heard the sound I was completely familiar with at this point, the clanking and rattling. It was the sound of our hotel room's door knob turning. Panic gripped my heart. I ran from the bed to the door and put my weight against the door. I held the doorknob with both hands to prevent it from turning, and I put my right foot flush against the base of the door. I shouted some threats I won't repeat to try and intimidate whoever was behind the door. My threats seemed to mean nothing to them, as they were still attempting to get in. It was so unbelievably terrifying, I cannot put it into words. My girlfriend was cowering behind the bed with her hands covering her head. She was screaming in horror. I was putting all my power into holding onto the door handle and screaming at the intruder. I realized I was losing the battle. The door was slowly opening. The gap was widening, half an inch, then an inch, and then 2 inches. It got to about 20 centimeters. The gap revealed the face of the intruder. It was a man wearing a face mask. He had long, dark, wet hair. It seemed to cling to his face. His eyes were completely focused on mine. I don't remember much else about him, except that he was dressed in black. He tried to jab his grasping hand towards me. I then briefly took my weight off the door, and finally when the gloved hand attached to this thick arm retracted, I shoved my full body weight against the door. It finally shut, and, in the melee, my girlfriend had found the key. She threw it over, I locked it, and then I heard the sound of shuffling off down the hallway. I immediately called the front desk to complain and to try and get some explanation of what just happened. They answered the phone instantly. It was a guy. "Someone just tried to break into my room." Perhaps it was another guest who got the wrong room number, sir." That annoyed me. I couldn't speak to this guy if that was his stance, so I just hung up. I made sure that key was still in that lock and that door was locked. I grabbed a beer and tried to calm myself and my girlfriend down. We were both lost for words. After about half an hour, I got a call from the front desk. "Hello, sir. We've had a noise complaint coming from your room this evening. Please, could I ask you to keep the noise down? Other guests are trying to sleep." "That's impossible. We haven't been making any noise apart from fending off the intruder. Thanks for your concern, by the way." "You are wrong. No noise." I was about to slam the phone down on him when he said, "Sir, it's against hotel policy to have more than 2 guests inside the room. Please, could you ask the other guests to leave?" I told him it was just me and my partner in the room and not to bother us again. This guy was useless. As I lay there, in the dark, completely sleepless, a thought came to me. What if the intruder had put in a phony noise complaint to see if I had a woman in there with me, or to see if I was still awake? That thought kept me awake that night. I waited for the sun to come up, woke up my partner, and we raced out of that hotel, and we never looked back. I really don't understand what happened that night, but it was the scariest night of my life. A long time ago, in a love hotel in Kansai, I found a notepad. You know, those sketchbooks that kids or artists draw in? It was one of those. I was with my girlfriend in the hotel, and after we completed round 3, she was tired and went to sleep. I stayed up and drank beers as a reward. I was messing around, rummaging through the drawers of the coffee table, and I came across the sketchbook. I opened the book up, and it was full of boastful stories of knightly conquests. It was silly, really. There were pages torn out of the book here and there, so I thought I would make my own message for my girlfriend while she was sleeping. I thought I would tear out a page and write, "I love you," or something. I know, I'm a true romantic, aren't I? I found the hotel's monogrammed ballpoint pen in the room to write my message. I turned over the page, and there was something written with red ink on the next page. I thought to myself, that's kind of weird. This person must have brought their own pen since the hotel supplied pen. wasn't read. Now, I'm gonna have to recreate this for you because it's integral to the storyline. Let me show you what the message was that I read. And I'll put it on the screen, take a look real quick. It looked like gibberish until something stood out to me. Can you see it? Oh, I figured it out and shock came over me. The message, it was written backwards. It read, "A woman was killed here. She will appear." I was really shocked, and I don't know why, but for some reason I turned around and looked directly towards the bathroom. Even though the lights were on, I saw the silhouette of something humanoid stood near the bathroom. I asked myself internally if I had just seen something terrifying. I was trying to make sense of it. I'd never seen anything like that before. My heart started to thunder in my chest. All the while, my girlfriend was sleeping peacefully. I thought that I would try not to alarm her by showing her how frightened I was by what I had just seen. It was like this perfectly black silhouette, visible in bright light. I can't explain it. Now, I was way too frightened to go and check if there was something in that bathroom by myself. I tried to heighten all my senses to try and ascertain if there was something in the bathroom without having to go in it. My girlfriend was still sleeping, but then she began to make noises of discomfort. These noises turned to moans and gasps. She was clearly being troubled by something in her sleep. I woke her up, as I didn't like seeing her like that. And as soon as she was awake, she pretty much began to cry. I asked her what happened and what was wrong. She told me that she had had a terrible nightmare. While I was sleeping, I had a nightmare that you were on top of me and you were strangling me. I felt my last gasps escape my body, and you were smiling at me. And I couldn't get away from you, and it was horrible. Well, we left that hotel in a hurry that night. I didn't want to be there anymore, and she didn't want to be near me for the rest of the night. She made that pretty fucking clear. After we left the hotel, she quit returning my calls and wouldn't come to the door when I went to her apartment. Whatever happened in that dream really changed her opinion of me or made her fearful of me. She continued to keep her distance from me, and eventually she broke up with me. It's a real shame because I really loved her. Yeah, that hotel had some kind of power. There was definitely something there. Something happened there, and something hated us there. I work in the demolition industry, mainly internal work, for like houses and commercial buildings. I guess you could call it refurbishment or removal work. I like to think of it as all three combined. It doesn't mean I get the pay of 3 jobs though, unfortunately. I have a few interesting and strange experiences I could share, but nothing tops the experience I had at the Love Hotel. It happened last year in Kabukicho in Shinjuku, that's a district in Tokyo. I was brought in for some dismantling work, and a lot of weird stuff went on while I worked there. I saw and heard things that were so unbelievable, I struggled to believe them myself. The site manager and the planning manager from our company were there with me, and a couple of other workers, but other than that, there wasn't really anyone else on site. However, doors would open by themselves, and water would suddenly start flowing from the taps in the bathrooms. The moment I walked into that place, I felt an eerie feeling, but I tried to push it to the back of my mind. The directors seemed to know something about the place, I'm certain of it. Anyway, back to the story. There was no electricity for about 80% of the site. I had to use a generator pretty much everywhere I went. My company paid for one, and it was brand new. As soon as I turned it on, in that Love Hotel, it stalled. Stuff like this went on from the first day. I called someone to come and take a look at it, and apparently there was nothing wrong with it. Only when I used it in that building there was a problem with it. I spoke to the boss and we got an electrician to fix the circuit breaker so that we could have light in the place. And after he hooked it all up, there was a massive improvement. I could finally get on with the job. So like I said, it was a love hotel. There were beds, TVs, sofas and things like that. I think our company took it over because the owners maybe went bankrupt or abandoned it. I first decided to take all that stuff out of the building. I was in all-out work mode at this point. Yet, while carrying all that stuff out, I had the feeling as if someone was watching me. Then, I started to find the weird stuff. Underneath the TVs and sofas were these religious sigils and symbols, either on the floor under them or directly attached to the objects themselves. Sheets kicked under the bed or behind wall units, which were dark and covered in this muddy red color. Too many red wines, I guessed and hoped. After I cleared all the rooms, I started dismantling fixed furniture units and the demolition of some walls in the hotel. I was shocked to find more weird things. For example, there was a doll in the wall with some magazines. It wasn't in the cement or anything, it was just loose in the drywall. I picked the doll out and I remember it had red eyes, like someone painted them red. Why is this important? I'll let you know. When I lifted that doll up, the lights went out again, and I could see that thing's eyes briefly before they faded into the darkness. Even though these weird things were going on, work was going pretty well. All I had to do was reset the circuit breaker and the lights were back on. I was working in a room by myself, and because the bathrooms were functional, I would sometimes see other people coming in and out who were working on the site with me. I had my back to the door and I felt a few taps on my shoulder. I thought that it was someone I was working with, trying to get my attention. I didn't turn around, I just asked aloud, "What's up?" Something like that. I got no response, so I turned around, and there was no one there. When you think about it, if I was working in a room with the door shut, I should have heard someone come in, right? Later that night, I was having a smoke outside, and another co-worker came over and struck up a conversation with me. He said there was something strange going on in the building. I was kind of pleased that it wasn't just happening to me, and I no longer had to question my sanity. He said that he could have sworn he saw a child run back and forth in his peripheral vision. Even though the circuit boards and the electricity was running properly, the floodlights outside went out and came on again. It happened a bunch of times. Somewhere in the distance, my co-worker and I confirmed that we heard laughter. We were all listening in. It was pretty spooky out at the hotel that night. We head back inside and I start work in the bathroom of the room I was working in before, and then for the first time in my life, I got something like sleep paralysis, yet I was wide awake. It was like being completely paralyzed and trapped inside your own body. I noticed that there was a person near the bed, and that person just stood there and stared at me. It was incredibly creepy. My coworker came in to call me to help with something, and then I was suddenly freed from sleep paralysis. It took a week to completely demolish the place. Now it's a parking lot, and I won't go anywhere near that place again, that's for sure. For some reason, there's only one building near the station in my hometown. It's got a bit of an unfortunate reputation. It's known as a place where people come to end things. The building has changed ownership many times over the years, and when my story takes place, it was an active love hotel. Now, before I get started, I just want to say that I would never describe myself as someone who could sense the presence of ghosts, so I didn't even bat an eyelid to the rumors that the love hotel was haunted. Actually, I really enjoy talking about ghosts and all things horror, so stuff like that has never really put me off. So we ended up staying at that love hotel one night, my boyfriend and I. I can't remember why, we missed the last train home or something. It was a 9-story building, and every room was booked out except room 303. So we took that room. When we got upstairs to my room, I put the TV on. After a while, the TV screen turned to static, so I had to call the front desk to let them know. They said that room 804 was now available, and if we wanted to switch rooms, we could. We found this a little weird because only a few moments ago we had the last vacancy in the building. Well, they said that if we wanted to watch TV, we would need to switch rooms. I didn't really care all that much about not having TV. It wasn't a massive priority, to be honest. It didn't seem like it would be worth the hassle of changing rooms. I just decided to persist with the TV in the room for a while. I did manage to watch TV for a bit, but it went back to the static again. I couldn't be bothered to call the front desk again, so I just gave up. I thought that I would just listen to some tunes instead. Back then, I was really into hip-hop, and I loved turning the bass up. The headphones were making this cracking sound. It was so annoying. Then the beaded bracelet I got from my boyfriend from the shrine broke off, and all the beads went scattering across the floor. He was just sitting on the end of the bed, and I could tell it annoyed him having to find each of the beads. I shut the music off to help him. Then from somewhere in the room we heard this loud cracking sound. It really startled us. We were both really tired at this point, so we thought it might be a good idea just to get some sleep so we could head out early in the next morning. When we got into bed and turned off the lights, the sensor light, which was near the door, kind of in the entrance area where you take your shoes off, came on by itself. Like I said, it's a sensor light, so it should only come on when motion has been detected near it, right? We started to get really creeped out. Something seemed wrong. We kept silent. I don't know why. Maybe we were a little too spooked out to talk for a while. I hit the lights, but accidentally I turned the wrong light on. Let me explain. There were a load of switches and buttons on a control panel by the bed. It even had a blacklight setting. It seemed as if something on the wall was being illuminated when I accidentally turned the blacklight on. I looked down and my pillow caught my eye. There was this horrible dark stain on the pillow. It looked like blood. I turned off the blacklight and turned the actual lights on, and before my eyes, the pillow turned back to this pristine white color. I was really creeped out. I thought that I was losing it. He wanted to go and take a bath, and I didn't think that was a bad idea, actually. I was too wound up to sleep. Maybe a nice bath would take our minds off of things. I told him he could go first, but only if he hurried. I was alone now, in the room, and I was scared. I heard a lot of strange noises coming from inside the room, electrical interference and things like that. Noises I probably wouldn't care about all that much if I wasn't that scared. I asked him to hurry up. I went over to the balcony windows and I opened them. I just wanted to change the air in the room. I heard that someone else in a nearby hotel room was arguing. Their voices were escaping through the open window. I could hear them quite clearly. It was a man and a woman arguing. I grabbed the railing of the balcony and leaned closer to the open windows to try and listen to what they were arguing about and maybe try to see which room they were in. When I leaned forward on the balcony railing, I nearly lost my balance. He came out of the bathroom and checked on me. He said that he could hear them too. He looked really concerned given how late it was. Now these were heated voices. This wasn't like a simple lover's quarrel. It sounded angry. He wondered if anyone else had noticed and complained. It was really loud. I decided against my bath. I didn't want to be alone in any part of that hotel. We just decided to go to sleep. I probably should have asked to leave, but we were so exhausted at this point. We shut the lights off once again. I heard the person in the room above ours walking back and forth. I guess that they were heading back and forth from the balcony, like I had a few moments ago. Maybe they were annoyed because they had heard what we had heard. Every step they took was making the floor creaking. It was a dreadful sound. I had to cover my ears just to get to sleep. When we woke up in the morning, I realized that the floors weren't even wooden. We got our stuff together and checked out as early as we possibly could. We went straight to an internet cafe. Yes, back when this happened, they were still a pretty big thing, and they kind of still are. Well, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, we went to an internet cafe. We put in the hotel's name, and one of the first things we found on the search engine was someone's account of creepy goings-on there. We found an interesting article too about the place. In the room directly above the room we stayed in, a couple had an argument which led to the death of the woman. The man strangled her. After that, he threw her body from the window to make it look like she had taken her own life. My spine froze when I heard that. all the sounds and the strange goings-on seemed to kind of play out what had happened, like time had overlapped. The argument, the pacing back and forth to the balcony, once the argument stopped. It couldn't have been, could it? I still would say I have no ability to detect spirits or anything, and I'm really glad I don't, because if I saw something, that would have been hellish. It was a truly creepy experience.